There we go. Welcome, everyone. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen here so we don't all have to stare at each other till later. Um, so excited to see you all. As always, I am Lauren Cook, your Dean of College and Gap Year Advising. And it has been great getting started with school the last few days. I hope your kids have good things to say about it. I feel like vibes are good, energy is good. Students that are in the room, thank you for showing up so well the first few days. So now it's time to get started formally with application season. So I'll just note my normal housekeeping notes. Please stay on mute until I'm done with content, which will probably be 15 minutes, maybe 20 if I yap too much. And then we'll have the rest of the time for questions. Know that as always, you can put questions in the chat. You can raise your Zoom hand if you'd rather speak out loud, whatever works for you. And I decided to schedule this quick meeting tonight, which is actually new this year, because while we're definitely transitioning away from group general advice and into more sort of one-on-one work and pursuing your own individual college prescriptions, everyone does have to get organized in kind of the same way for the process, and thought it would be helpful to have some general reminders about the direction we're headed in, short-term goals for the next couple of weeks, months. And the students will also see me during a grade meeting later this week, but wanted to make sure parents had one last chance for a big group gathering. So, what we are going to cover this evening, our agenda is to talk about getting organized with the application list, which is the number one most important thing to be doing in the next few weeks. Getting organized with essay writing and how to bounce it back and forth with me for review and then to continue polishing. And then a little bit on reporting scores to colleges, which nobody has to be doing just yet, but I want to make sure that we're all clear on whose responsibility it is to turn in scores and how to check policies and all the rest. Then we'll talk about some dates to save, keep in mind as we're headed into the fall, both in terms of college advising events and then pesky deadlines, because deadlines are very much a thing with college advising, although they tend to be more flexible with JCHS. So we're going to talk about the difference between those two things and deadlines to think about. And then we'll just review resources to help with all of these things, make sure folks know where to go to have questions answered, and then we'll do some questions. So that's the plan. We will end at 7:30, hard stop then, but if you run out of questions, we may end earlier. And as always, I'm recording and we'll distribute this to everyone in the class as soon as Mr. McDonald gets it on YouTube. So with that, let's start with the getting organized of it all. Know that it's hard to do any next steps in the process without knowing where you're applying. So, your number one priority right now, if you don't have a pretty set application list and score, some of you do, and some of you have it kind of under construction, some of you don't, is to be thinking about this over the next really 5 weeks. So, these are due, they need to be in score by, I believe it's a Wednesday, September 30th. And then the next day, I'm going to start reviewing them to say to you, we got too many reaches, or I feel like you could push yourself a bit more. We got a lot of likelies here, or where's your list? So please have those in by September 30th. 10 to 12 colleges is, as always, what we're sort of looking for. If you think it might be a little less or a little more, not a huge deal, but certainly check in with me if you think you're going to get wildly outside of those parameters. We want a mix of those reach, possible, and likely schools. Everybody should have some predictions on their list in score, but if you've added a bunch of new schools recently, just drop me a line and let me know so I can go in and add more predictions for you so you're working with all the good data. And you're going to want to record and score how you plan to apply. And we're going to go over these terms here again in a minute. But I mean by this, the application plans for early action, early decision, regular, what you're thinking about. And I do have some advice on that, mainly that if a school offers early action, you want to do that, or at least you want to put in score your intention to do that. And as we get closer to the deadline, we can always refine that a little bit. But this is a strategic choice and we're going to talk about why. So let's just review what these terms mean. Early action is the non-binding one. So you apply early, often early November, you find out early, and you don't have to act on that decision. You can just put it in your back pocket. You can know you're going to college and wait for other decisions to come in. Early decision, you think about like, I have made a decision. I have my number one choice. They offer this binding agreement and I want to do it. And it's where you're committing that if you get in, you will go. So it is a thing that we all have to sign, and we'll get to that in a moment. But you choose one school for early decision. Now, some schools have created their own third pathway. Makes me a little crazy, but it's a couple of Ivies, Stanford, where they call it restricted early action, meaning it's not binding. If you get into Stanford, you don't have to go, but they are going to restrict where else you can apply. So this is kind of a tricky lane. If you are looking at a school that has this and you're interested in it, let's just make sure that we talk about it so you understand the full implications. And then the rest will have regular decision. So when you think about like the University of California system, they just have the one deadline, the one app plan. It would fall under regular decision. But some schools have a variety of these along with regular. So you need to kind of make a choice in score. Why do I recommend early action? Well, the data shows, if I can get my slide to move along here, this is from the last 5 years of applications from JCHS by app plan. So you'll see that those restrictive policies, early decision, restricted early action, colleges love those because you're saying, I'm going if you take me. And so right now, about 52-ish% of our applicants are getting in somewhere with those restrictive plans. You see this big number with early action. And some of that, to be fair, is because there are some likely schools that offer early action. So we do well with early action. But, the majority are getting in when they apply early action. And then it drops way down with regular. And I will say, especially with some of the big out of state publics, so like a Wisconsin, University of Maryland, University of Michigan, you really do see this difference between early action and regular decision. They appreciate you being organized, getting everything early, getting everything in early, and usually reward you with something there. So this is why I really want you to lean into early action if it's available. Okay, so let's talk about how you actually put things in score in your applying list. So the arrow here is to indicate when you're looking at your list, if you want to put Tulane from following to applying, you literally drag that tile over, right? And just it's very drag and drop easy. When you do that, you will get a pop-up. And this is for sort of a typical private school, out of state public. If their application method, if Common App is an option, select that. That's what you want to do out of everything else here. It then may ask you if you have a Common App ID. This is not required. If you've started your Common Application online, you do have that ID. You can copy paste it here. It makes it easier for them to match paperwork, but you don't have to go fishing for that. Again, if you've got early action as an option, and whatever school I chose here has all of these options, go with the early action unless something else is compelling. You don't have to have an accurate idea at this point if you're submitting test scores, and then whatever email you've used on the application forms that you've started to sign up for. So for most folks, it's your JCHS email. Okay, for things like the UCs, CSUs, all you're going to see is one option here. College website means like the UC application. And then regular decision is the one deadline that they offer to you. So it's pretty straightforward to fill those all out. Again, email and save it. Okay, if you are thinking about one of these binding plans, you're going to get this pop up. And some of you have already pulled schools over where you said you're going to apply early decision, but you haven't done this, which is fine. But what I would do here is drag it back to your following list and then put it back in applying. And then this will come up. It will kind of reset the situation because you have to fill out this early decision agreement for me to be able to send your materials to a college. So you're going to read here that you know that this is a binding agreement, that you're going to enroll if you are admitted, and that you're not applying anywhere else early decision. You'll sign, meaning you'll just type your name in. And then it'll ask you to give them a parent name and email. So whatever parent would be monitoring their email, you're going to put that in, and then it bounces the same sort of agreement to them. And they need to say, yes, I'm aware if my child is admitted, they're going to go. We're not applying anywhere else early decision. And then it bumps it to me. So all of us have some skin in the game. So we also want to make sure you're really serious. And then once everybody has signed, we're all buttoned up, then I can send your materials when you actually do go ahead and submit. Okay, I think that's that on score list. But if other questions, weird situations come up, let me know. Happy to work through them with you. September 30th, have the list ready. On to writing. I will just remind that most folks are not done with their Common App essay unless I have told you you're done. So even if you're happy with what you did last spring for your English class, please plan to reshare that with me so I can give it a once over. And note that every time you want me to review something, reshare it with me. So even if I'm shared on the doc, I want it to end up in my inbox saying, the student wants you to look at this essay. And I would highly recommend using the document tabs to separate by either task, like your Common App essay, activities, or by school. So that then when you reshare the essay, you can say, look, Boston College, Oregon State, and Tufts are ready for you to look at. Ignore the rest of it, right? And we can go back and forth. So you don't have to be done with everything to share something with me for me to start looking at it. I'll probably put some comments in. I'll let you know when I think something is good enough and ready to go. And sometimes folks will then put in the tab itself if something is done or under construction so that we're both sort of aware of where you are with the process. All right, on to my favorite topic of testing. So I'll take a breath. Okay, so you want to check your testing policies carefully if you are testing and planning to submit scores. So the first question will be, where are you sending test scores if you're sending them? Obviously, some of you are applying to schools that require scores, so we know that they're going to go there. And then if you've got a test optional school and you're not sure whether to submit your scores or not, I will suggest that you check, and you can literally just Google this, what the middle 50% of their admitted student test scores are. Score has an average, so it's got just like one number in there, and that's helpful. So if you're just above or below that, great. But Googling the middle 50%, it's something that's in nationally published data. You can get a sense of the broader range, or if it's a tight range, if the average is like a 33 on the ACT, but it's between 32 and 34, right? Then if you're within that range or certainly above it, absolutely submit scores. If you're below that range, I would generally say if it's test optional, you're putting your best foot forward by leaving them out. But if you're not sure about the judgment call of it all, let me know. You also want to consider how you're sending scores. So in the testing policies on colleges' websites, probably in some parts of Common App, it will tell you if they want official scores, meaning they want them directly from ACT or SAT. This is rare, but last year I saw a few more schools starting to do this. Maryland has recently reenacted they want official scores. So you have to log into your account there. It costs like $10 or something a score report to send it to a school. You've got to order those to go. Otherwise, most places are still saying self-reported scores are fine. That means whatever you've typed into your applications, they will just take that on trust that that's how you scored and just affirm it with official score reports if you end up going to that school. And then there is a question around when are you sending scores? So I will say anyone looking at early action for Maryland and Michigan, and this holds true for their regular deadline as well, they want everything received on their deadline date. And so most colleges are fine to be, sort of having you, send your materials, or even my materials might come in a little after the deadline. But Maryland and Michigan are really sticklers for this. So you want to go into ACT, SAT the middle of October because even though it's an electronic transfer, these things for some reason take a week or two. So you want to put a reminder in your calendar, in your phone, whatever you need to do, middle of October, if you think you're sending scores, to go ahead and order those reports so we know that they're in by the deadline. But you might also be taking tests after that. So you should also be checking testing policies to see if you've got a late October test date or something in November and you do better, will a school still take it after the deadline? And most will because they are looking for ways, many places, to admit you, right? So if the scores are higher, most will take something later, but not everyone will. So these are all things that you will need to check on. And know that I will be sending these slides out tomorrow too. So if you want to have a quick checklist for yourself to remember, you will have that. Okay. We will shift now into some events, important gatherings. You will have calendar invites for some of these, some are still forthcoming. But I'll just remind you, students, we have a grade meeting Thursday where we'll go over some of this if there are folks not on the call tonight and just have more time for student to student questions. College visits are going to start next week. I think next Wednesday is the first day of visits. Hopefully, you're getting pinged in SCORE as colleges are signing up. We've got 50 or 60 at this point, and I think we're going to soar past 75 or 80 because there's still some schools that always visit us that haven't booked. So keep an eye on that. Make sure you're registering in SCORE. Make sure you let faculty members know with 24 hours notice that you're going to miss class if you don't have study hall then. We will have some application drop-in hours, always in room 120 during various flex blocks and after school. I've sent some of these calendar invites. Some are forthcoming. I might add another one in October. We'll just see how we're doing by then. This is open time to work on your applications. I find it can be really helpful for folks to have like a bucket to put some application work time in, work with your friends, ask questions of each other. And I'm always there, and we usually have a running list of names on the board if folks have quick questions for me that we'll just kind of cycle through. This does not replace a full appointment with me, though. So if you've got more than two or three quick questions, we should have an appointment and sit down and really talk about things. But this is a good chance to get a lot of work done. We will also have College Money Method sessions this fall. So there is one specifically on applying for financial aid and scholarships that will be on October 5th, and then one about loans and borrowing on December 1st. Paul always records these and pops them up on his website the next day. So if you can't do it live, it's not a huge deal, but it is a nice time to ask questions live if you are in the room. And hopefully folks saw my email from last week about the update, revision, refresh that he did to our school resource page. There's a lot more information and it's better organized. And I'll continue to remind you how to find those links and videos after those meetings. Pivoting into deadlines for a moment. If you remember nothing else from tonight, any students, college deadlines are real, right? Unlike many things during your high school years, they are unmovable. If you miss them, you might miss your shot at things, right? So we need to be very attuned to deadlines. So because of that, I have my own internal Miss Cook deadlines to try and save you from yourselves so that we are not waiting until the last second to do things. So that's one reason we've got the application list due on September 30th. So we know for at least the whole month of October what work you have to do for those first deadlines. And then we'll keep working deadline by deadline into the winter. Note that if you are planning to apply somewhere, early action, early decision, anything that might be kind of a November date, then October 27th is the drop dead final date that you can send me any materials to review. Folks are sending me things now. You absolutely should send me things as you have them ready for me to look at. Ideally, you're not just sending me your first things on October 27th, but any writing, full PDFs of applications, this is your last chance. And then I will try and turn them around in 24 to 48 hours so that you can then submit those applications in a timely fashion. Now, I will pause on the deadlines for a moment because I want to talk about grades that get submitted to colleges. I've gotten a couple of questions just in the last few days about that, so you kind of know what you're gunning for. We want your whole year to be strong. We want you to be working hard every month of senior year, but two grade reports to be particularly mindful of. If you are going to do some early applications, something in early November, you have the option typically to send grade report two to those schools. I say the option because it's generally not required by schools. They don't assume that we have grades at that point. And in fact, some classes haven't had a lot of assessments by then, so there might not be a meaningful grade to share. But a lot of the time, folks are doing well right out the gate because it's just 2 months or so into the school year. That report is due to Ms. Bregman on November 2nd. Once you've looked at it and have a chance to let the dust settle, then I will send some emails to you saying, what do you want me to do with this? And if I disagree with what you tell me, I'll let you know and we'll have a little conversation about it. But if you're doing well, we can send those off to colleges and it shows that you're off to a strong start. If there's an outlier, something weird's going on, often we can choose to not send it and no one's going to follow up and ask, like, where are grades at this point? Okay, back to deadlines. The UC and the CSU is the next big deadline. That is the end of November. It's the end of Thanksgiving break. So, because I do like to have a bit of a Thanksgiving break, November 20th is the drop dead date for that. That's the Friday going into Thanksgiving break. I will spend that weekend reviewing any UC, CSU materials, pushing them back to you, and then you should be getting them in before the deadline. And then regular decision, things that are due in early January, those first 10 days or so where we're back from winter break. Anything that's due then should be sent to me by December 21st. And this is a couple days into winter break in case you had a lot of assessments, things due up until the 11th hour before we're on break. I'll give you a few days into break to work on things, send them to me, and then I'll get them back to you. And know that I will send reminders about all of these. These deadlines are on the college advising calendar. You don't have to memorize them, but I want you to be aware that these are in place and I'm serious about them. And then the required grade report that goes out is January. We call that the mid-year. Most colleges want to see mid-year grades. And so January 11th, this is the time where you can catch up on stuff during winter break. You can retake assessments. And then January 11th is when these grades are due to Miss Bregman. And I then just send those out as soon as they are ready. And those go pretty much everywhere, even a place you might have been admitted to early decision or early action. They still require the mid-year or the mid-year. So you can't let the your foot off the gas just because you got in somewhere in December. So you got to keep working on things. And the only place that doesn't require this are the UCs and CSUs. They don't want grade updates. They just want to see the end of the year. Okay, thank you for hanging in there. I know this is so much detail. Quick reminder on your resources, and then we will open it up for questions. So if you are still researching colleges, trying to pull together the last schools on your list, a reminder that visiting campus is the number one way to get a sense of the vibe, but also doing an online info session, especially if you're thinking at this point about like, well, I'm interested in their nursing school or I'm interested in, a specific, the business school or department. Sometimes those particular colleges will hold their own info sessions. So that's a great way to spend half an hour, because it will help you write supplements for those schools. And then, of course, come to the meetings at JCHS. And even if a school is already on your application list, even if you visited campus, remember that coming to the JCHS visit can help you with demonstrated interest, meeting the person who's going to be reading your application, et cetera. You can also check out reviews. Niche is a website that I think can be great to give you some grades and sort of overall feedback on various colleges. The FIS Guide has those nice summaries. And then we've got JCHS alumni in a lot of places, not everywhere. But if you want to reach out to someone, or if you're not sure if we have an alum on a campus, ask me and I can check score and see what contact information we have. In terms of completing your applications, remember that there are videos in our Google Classroom for the Common App and the UC application. I don't have the CSU video up yet, but know that that is the shortest, quickest, easiest application, so you shouldn't even be looking at that yet. And I'll get that video in there soon. Also note that there's help buttons. As you're in Common App, as you're on the UC app, they're responsive to the page you're on. So if something's going awry or you're not sure what's happening, make sure you're clicking the info or help buttons to see more information. And then with your writing, remember that I and potentially your current English teacher, so Miss Rubin or Dr. J, are a great and should be sort of primary sources of assistance with this. I know some of you are also having a parent look at it, or maybe Dr. Neufeld or Miss Castillo. When we start giving it to best friends and Aunt Barb and extra people, we've got a lot of cooks in the kitchen, no pun intended. So I would limit how many people you are sending your essay to, because at some point it's just going to water it down and you'll get conflicting advice, and they're not your college counselor. So remember, me, your English teacher, very helpful. And then also know sometimes folks want to see examples of those supplemental questions. So why Tulane, or why do you want to major in this particular area, or what is it about us that draws you to us? Um, the one resource I think can be really helpful outside of me is the college essay guy. He's got a very robust website and he's got Common App advice and all of that as well. Fine. But he does have almost every college and their supplements on there. And he's got some example successful responses, as well as more prompt questions for you to think about that might help you flesh out those supplemental responses. So again, when you read too many of these, you might start feeling like you have to mimic them. I think sometimes too much information cannot be helpful. But if you're really stuck, you're like, I don't know what they're asking for here, I would go to that website and just noodle around in there as well. Okay, you have been great. Thank you for hanging in there. I am now going to stop sharing my screen and see if we have questions in the chat. We do, and then see if we've got some other live questions. So, oh, this might just be all AI assistants telling me they're here, which I love to know. Great, great, great. AI, AI, AI. Okay, is there a limit to early action? Excellent question. Generally, no. So the limit is your child or student, your own ability to get stuff done by that early deadline. So when you are putting stuff in score, and I'm telling you to lean into clicking that early action, know that you might discover that like all of your schools have early action. And it might be unreasonable to think you're going to get all 10 supplements if they all ask for supplements done by November 1st. And that's fine. What I would ask you to prioritize is your reach schools and your possible schools. So the best way to ensure that you have your best shot at those schools where you might be a little bit off the profile or they might be a little more competitive is getting that early action in. And if you don't get to your likely schools or all of your likely schools, that's fine. In some cases, you can sort of start inching a likely into a possible if you don't do early action, but that's how I would sort of prioritize work if you find you've got a lot of places that offer early action. But generally, there's no limit. And then there's a question about, are senior year grades calculated into the GPA for college? Great question. They are not. So the GPA that you are reporting on your applications and the cumulative that's sort of highlighted on your JCHS transcript is ninth, 10th, and 11th grade. So that's why sending these midterm or mid-year reports can be really helpful because A, you've probably got the most weighted classes you've ever had. So that GPA, even if you got straight Bs, can sometimes be quite impressive. And the school might do some of their own recalculation or whatnot. But because we're on a year-long grading system, until the year is done, it does not impact your cumulative GPA. So keep that in mind. And then remember that the UCs and CSUs are calculating a GPA for the student that is just 10th and 11th grade. So it's even a little different from the JCHS one. Lots of numbers to be keeping in mind, but hopefully that's clear. Okay, question about and merit money strategy and prioritizing early action. Great question. So, if you are a student whose profile is at or above sort of what the college is sort of looking for, and you could know that from test scores or from GPA amounts or how I've put them on your list. If these are likely or possible schools for you, you will, if they offer merit money, be a very strong contender for merit money. And applying early action, some of these places really lean into that because, again, it's not binding when you get that admission offer. So they want to make a compelling case out the gate for you to enroll. Early decision can be a little bit different because they know they got you if you are admitted. So most schools will say, you know, we offer the same merit awards to the same type of student early decision as we do regular. But I think where you see a more consistent big merit awards is with that early action. And sometimes, you know, they've blown through a fair amount of their awards with early action. So regular decision, you also can sometimes not have as many compelling offers. So thank you for bringing that up, Maya. That is another compelling reason to be thinking about early action. So question about, do you recommend doing the SAT in addition to the ACT just in case a school might want it? I do not. And they won't want two test scores. So everybody accepts both evenly. And for a good couple of years there in the early 2020s, the ACT was actually a more popular test than the SAT. So I know sometimes adults have an SAT bias since that's the like old school big one. But choose one test. They are a little different if you're prepping for it, if you've taken a practice test or several practice tests. There's no reason to split your attention and be spending twice as much time prepping for these tests because nobody's going to ask for both. So if you've chosen one, if you've taken one, I would just double down and continue to work on that one particular test. What about SLO? Yes. So Cal Poly San Luis Obispo is a California State University, is a CSU. So yes, that is a 10th, 11th grade average. They do look at, and you have to enter in your classes and grades from ninth grade, but they don't factor that into the GPA and your classes for senior year because they are interested in rigor and they're interested in knowing the choices you've made within what's available to you at JCHS. But the grades themselves, it's just 10th and 11th grade. So one thing I say in my videos for the UCs and CSUs is if you've done any other like summer college classes or if you've done a little advancing in geometry on BYU or one of these online high schools, you want to shove those in the UC and CSU application into sophomore or junior year. So if you did it the summer after ninth grade, that's the summer before 10th grade. So you want to sort of attach those to your 10th and 11th grade year, especially if you did well, because it'll help continue to boost that GPA up. Hope that makes sense. Okay, and then there's a question, when you can self-report an SAT score, can they submit their super score? Yes, if that's in the school's testing policy. So I believe on Common App, it asks you what is your highest English score and your highest math score? What's your highest science on the ACT? So it is asking you in essence to put in your super score. But you'll want to check the school's policy on their website about if they accept super scores, and almost everybody does right now. But just to be sure, because you want to make sure you're not appearing to try and fudge the numbers, for a school that doesn't want to look at it that way. If you do super score something, say you've got two ACT sittings and together that gives you a really high score, and it's a place that wants an official score report, know that you have to order both of those sittings to be sent, right? So that they're seeing the official sitting for each one, and then they'll combine them. So many details. We're in the weeds now, you guys. Hope we're doing okay. Other questions, if folks want to ask live, if you want to pop anything in the chat. I will say I've had some excellent appointments with students today and last Thursday and Friday. Folks seem to be locked in on top of it. I will also say our admission reps that were at our workshop a few weeks ago at school had raving comments about working with the students, thought that the writing looked really good. They were impressed with the interviews. They just had really good feedback and know that they will tell me if sometimes they feel like folks are not, quite up to par, but good reviews for the class of 2027. Okay, we've got a question of what should my son be prioritizing now that he waits for his SAT score? Great question. If he is taking it again, even with that, we can still pause and kind of see where the score is at, and then if there's some particular drilling down to do on another test. But until then, in this pause period, I would say working on the data entry on applications. So for most folks, that means getting the Common App under control right now, because that's where you're going to find most of the early action, early decision plans. So the data entry on Common App and the longer Common App essay. When you have Miss Cook's Hecture, you can put your Common App essay actually into your Common App. And then starting to move on to getting organized with those supplemental questions. Those are the most important things with college right now. Of course, staying on top of your homework is also very important. Question about how are you working with students to identify appropriate schools? I feel like the list is incomplete. Great question. And I believe I have a meeting with your son tomorrow or some point this week. So I am cycling through, also checking in with everyone to see, first and foremost, where we're at with the list. and feedback, commentary, extra recommendations I might have on that, and then moving on to writing and some of these other things. So we'll talk about that in our check-in, and I will probably give some marching orders for when he leaves that meeting. And then if you have other questions, and students have been emailing me periodically to say, I just am having trouble finding another likely that I like, or, I'm pivoting away from what I initially told you. Now I'm more interested in these four priorities. Can you make a few more suggestions? Please let me know if you want some help from me to continue populating the suggested column and give you a couple more schools to research. So it's both me reaching out to students and also needing some proactivity on the part of students. If you need help, let me know. I can't read minds. Question about, did you say that students need to register for the schools that visit JCHS via SCORE? No, I did say that, so you did not mishear. So when you log into the student platform on SCORE, on the right-hand navigation, it says something like college visits and deadlines. And if you scroll down, because it's not always visible if you've got other stuff happening, you will just start to see the first visits next Wednesday. And then you can click to see the whole list and look at the whole shebang. There's a big blue button that says register right next to every school. So please do hit that because the rep can see numbers of who's coming, which is useful, and I see names. And I do print an attendance list, and it is helpful for me if I see that a visit is becoming particularly popular. I'm giving a heads up to say it's AP biology that block. Dr. Brohl will sometimes augment her lesson plan if it looks like she's not going to have much of a class, right? Because everyone's going to see NYU or whatever it is. So it is important to register. And that also might prompt you, okay, I'm going to go to the NYU visit. What class do I have then? You need to email Ms. Falk, Dr. Burrell, whoever, and ask permission. Say, is it okay if I go to this college visit? 24 hours notice. I will give some grace, and I've asked teacher to give some grace for the first day or two of visits. If you forget, if you show up for AP biology, I don't know why I'm picking on Dr. Burrell, and you're like, oh my God, I forgot, that BU is coming right now. Can I please go down and go to the visit? She has every right to say no, but we'll try and give some grace in the first day or two as we get back into the habit of this. But after that, you cannot just wing it. You do need to do some advanced planning. Okay, where can parents view the upcoming school's visit schedule to JCHS? I believe that you can also see it in your SCORE portal. There is just a calendar you can click on, but it's also on the college advising calendar. And the last two, I think, week ahead emails you've gotten have a quick link to be like, subscribe to the college advising calendar. So if you're on Google Calendars, it then just populates everything for you. But know that it's on that calendar. You can also find that calendar off of the portal. If you go to the college advising website, just general JCHS website, I believe it says subscribe to the college advising calendar there as well. How much is it the parents' role to make sure our kid is hitting deadlines? Will it be obvious at school? Such a great question. This is where parents and I are going to partner, and I am going to take the brunt of it early on. And there'll be lots of emails and lots of reminders. And I have a spreadsheet of all of y'all where I'm stalking you and I haven't seen you in a minute, or I feel like deadlines are coming up and you're in the wind. I am going to be trolling the comments looking for you and trying to make sure that we're staying on top of things. But also ultimately, when we're a few days, of the deadlines, I don't submit your applications for you, right? Nobody wants me in your child's bedroom, helping them submit applications the night before it's due. So there will come a point where it is on the student or the family to make sure that things are in and everything's buttoned up. So I will do a lot of nudging and then eventually harassing, and then Hashem be with you as we get close to the actual deadline. And I will just say that it is my general advice to everyone, and I will say this louder and louder and louder as we get close to deadlines, is that nothing gets submitted on a deadline, because the Common App every year melts down technologically as millions of kids are hitting submit around the globe. It's not just in the US. So it is a best practice to at least do it the day before the deadline. Do not make your bad planning my emergency. It won't be my emergency, it'll be your emergency. So things should really be in at the latest the day before the deadline. And I will say that over and over and over. But you can submit things weeks before the deadline if you'd like. They're not going to review it yet, but once it's done, I feel like get it off your plate, send it in, and move on to the next thing. So, and once you've gotten all your applications in, you can hit the gong in my office. You are done with this part of the process. We can take a moment to breathe and then move on to what's next. Last question here. If I suggest a school to my student, how does it then transfer to their score list? So in an ideal world, they enter it to their score list. But the best way to do that is for you to log into Score, presuming you've got your account. And if any of you aren't on Score and are like, I'd like to be on it now and know what's happening, let me know and I'll resend an invite. But you can go in and put it on the student's suggested list so that it's in there saying, mom, dad, me, whoever have suggested this for you. And then as we keep building the college list, I might ask about if we're having a meeting, what's left over in the following and suggested list? Have we thought about those, etc. All right. Question. Other than contacting or visiting a school, how do I know it is safe with, anti-Semitism wise? Great question. So we never know if anything is 100% safe. I'll just, say the obvious outright, and that the climate right now could be a different climate at the point of a child enrolling. But there's a couple of good barometers. The first, I would say, is getting some on the ground feedback. And so that can mean calling up the Hillel director. They are so happy to talk to parents and will be really real with you. And so whether that's about climate, anti-Semitism, or whether it's about general community and size, or whether it's about observance, because sometimes, students are Shomer Shabbat, and the Hillel director will say, we've got like 5 Shomer Shabbat kids on campus. And maybe that's okay for your child to be in that small of a community, but they will be really real with you about a good level of nuance about what's available. But also, JCHS alumni can be useful. Now, of course, as a pluralistic school, we have pluralistic alumni, right? So there's all different types of opinions and feedback you'll get from folks. But that's also a good way to get on the ground student feedback on something. I will also say that the ADL did this grading of colleges, like literal A through F. And the first year they released them, I don't know if that was 2 or 3 years ago now. It was like everyone got an F except like 2 campuses. They re-upped those in this past year. There's a little more variety and nuance now. I think the colleges that got all those Fs were paying attention. So that is also a place to check. Now, the ADLs has their own set of criteria by which they're grading schools, and our families may or may not agree with it. But that's another place that you can double check. So I would do these things. And also, you can check in with me, especially if it's a place where it's a well-tread path for JCHS students that I can tell you what I've been hearing from on the ground. Okay, what else? Oh, I've seen the ADL score color. Great. Yeah. Yeah. Elon University was like one of the 2 places that got like an A plus in the first year. And Elon is like a slept on institution. They're in North Carolina. It's a mid-sized place. It's not a thriving metropolis around Elon. It's definitely a smaller town area, but it's a terrific school and they do great things with the Jewish community. So anyway, for what that's worth, I remember that. In my Brandeis was probably the other one that got an A. Any other questions? This has been very productive. It's 7:16. I'll give it another minute or two and see if anything else comes up, and then we might leave it to the grade meeting later in the week. All right. Well, good. Well, thank you all for being here. I hope this was helpful. I will send out the recording. I will send out slides. And as you all, as parents, are interested in connecting with me, please let me know. You can always proactively book meetings with me, whether that's on Zoom or in person. My calendar is booking up over the next 2 or 3 weeks because once the school visits start or the college visits, I have to host those as well as meet with your kids. But everybody, all the students have a meeting booked with me or have just met with me. So everyone's getting a first pass at attention, and then we'll take it from there. So thank you all, and have a good Monday night. Bye.